I feel the biggest change that we saw was the massive wildfire of the year 2000. And it just changed everything, basically. It changed the infrastructure of the facility. It changed how wildlife interacted in that environment. It changed our role as managers and scientists at that field station, because so much of what we did was either everything was directly oriented to the fire, either the effect on our water system and our fences, or the interest in research which came about. And there was a lot of interest in research from a forestry perspective, from the tree ecology, so to speak, vegetative ecology, rangeland ecology, and Jim Peake did a lot of work in that arena, both with pre and post fire data to look at for comparison. And the stream itself, lost a lot of its riparian cover, and that whole dynamic changed. Flows changed with runoff. The stability of the airstrip had to be dealt with. There was so many things that fire affected, and it really, from our personal carnivore research perspective, I felt took us out of a forefront situation and directly comparable to what was going on in the Yellowstone system with the work we were doing, to not having the time anymore to really look at how wolves, for instance, were affecting the mountain lion, the cougar situation.
Can you talk about how that fire affected you both personally?
Yeah, it was high drama for us, and we'd been through fire before at Taylor Ranch in 1988, the same time Yellowstone was going through its big fire episode. We had a 100,000 acre fire that was primarily to the north of Big Creek, but was a threat to Taylor Ranch, and we spent a few weeks, I won't say under siege, but under the protection of the Forest Service with that fire positioned just to the north of us. I don't remember what that complex was called at that time, but it was a major fire. Golden Creek fire. But it was nothing like what we experienced with the Diamond Point fire and the big fire of 2000, which involved multiple fires merging together, us having to evacuate the field station and going to our nearest neighbor 21 miles away, and then having the opportunity or the misfortune to experience a real firestorm once we were at the Flying Bee on the Middle Fork of the Salmon. It was high drama. It was scary. It was, in a way, life-changing to go through that sort of an experience, and something that people who are living in remote situations today are typically not given the opportunity to experience.
I think for me, the fire was the first time I really felt like, this is what wilderness is about. We have no control over this environment or what's going to happen to us. We don't have the option to just fly out or be rescued, call in a helicopter. So that was quite a different feeling. We'd always been comfortable in the wilderness and not afraid of what might happen, or that we might be in danger in the backcountry. But that was truly a sense of knowing that we had no power over nature, and nature was going to do whatever happened, and we were going to be the victims of it, whether it turned out well or not well. So that was certainly a big enlightening perspective for me.
And it was a level of stimulation that I don't think I've ever felt before, particularly when we were at the Flying Bee, and we had a dozen or so people that were all in the same situation, and we knew that our survival was dependent upon our emergency plan, implementing that plan, and our instincts and how we responded at that moment to what was going on. And it seems like the bear report post massive fire evaluation that the Forest Service did indicated that what we experience very few career firefighters go through, which is being in the middle of a firestorm. And it's
What was that like? Can you talk about that?
yeah, it was scary, basically, and it was a new experience. So you just didn't know what was going to happen next. You were reacting at the moment, and Holly and I were in separate situations. She was out in a great big alfalfa field with a large herd of horses and mules, and some women that were less physically capable to react to that situation. And I was ultimately trapped in a shop with two guys that had a similar responsibility to. That was our fallback point, was to go to that shop, and that we didn't really realize that it would be to protect ourselves from a horrific wind, because there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 100-mile-an-hour wind that was accompanied with the fire front as it overwhelmed the Flying Bee facility. And no, it was just totally high drama and putting out spot fires. And then as we all regrouped after the big fire front had run its course, it was one of firefighting and structural firefighting. So it was intense drama, and a great big extension bridge that spanned the Middle Fork of the Salmon. It pulled out of its foundation that was built in 1950. So it had gone 100 years or 50 years without experiencing that type of wind before. So again, it was just simply high drama, adrenaline rush.
Then immediately following the fire, the adrenaline rush disappeared, and was quite a depressing sense. There was a lot of fighting among the Flying Bee employees, and just a sense of depression where we were looking at the devastation of burned areas that previously we never would have imagined could have burned. Lush riparian areas, and we're finding dead and dying wildlife. And so that was really hard to deal with. And we had a sense of melancholy for quite a while after that. It just felt like all this beautiful area that we lived in was now blackened and not so nice. And I vividly remember thinking, well, I know as a scientist that fire is good, and I kept telling myself, remember, fire is good, but it's kind of a not in my backyard sense. Yeah, fire over there is good, but right where we lived, for a while, it was very hard to see the beauty in the area, and we had to actively seek out beautiful things, a new flower, or the color of the new shrubs coming up in the riparian in the fall. It was difficult, and then even like we would fly out from the wilderness and come to places like this Wallowa Valley and see all these green trees, and it just seemed incredible that there were slopes of green trees. So our whole perspective was altered by our environment, living every day in an area that had burned trees and burned forest, that green forest actually seemed quite unusual to us. So that was very interesting to see that our perspective could change so much.